that's for me. Living life so merrily, it's so easy, can't you see? Polka, polka, that's for me. Polka, polka, everyone come along, it's lots of fun.
Miguel Arati back here at the Talk and Shoot podcast, and we are getting towards the end of one of our favorite themes, one of our long-lasting themes here. I got co-host Mike Davis and sidekick Dave Sidursky along here for this one. Welcome aboard, guys. Dave.
Good morning, guys.
There we go.
We're all here.
Dave runs Mythical Boxing out on Facebook and on the internet. You can check it out there. I don't know that there's many people out there who are putting so much content on a daily basis practically and stuff, and good stuff too. So Mythical Boxing, well worth checking out. Mike, we're really not sure what Mike does at all.
No, right. Vagabond, hobo, vagrant, all of those things can be applied to what it is I do.
He's talking from the track right now. He was heading to the track after our last podcast, and that's where he is now.
Yeah, I just came from the old folks, so I'm shook them down. And now I'm going to the tracks.
Exactly.
You know what I actually really like about Dave's Mythical Boxing site on Facebook is that a conversation will start in one direction, and then it just splinters into different avenues of topics and facts, and everybody on there is like, it just seems like participates, and the knowledge and fights that get posted on that site are crazy. It's a huge distraction for me, actually.
And to give Dave a little more props, very little, BS. Very little conflict or politics or people who come on board. Maybe we get too many people on there and that'll change. But for right now, the core audience there is it's a very nice site. So Dave, you deserve a lot of credit. I want to thank you for coming here. What we're doing here today is the greatest boxer of all time. This is our part 5 of that ongoing discussion. So
this is a never-ending discussion.
Yeah, and I'm actually thinking we could do this with a couple of different people, like almost on a yearly basis, and see how it goes. I'm not sure yet, but just an idea because of the variation and stuff, because there literally could be more information found. I recently had the opportunity to talk to Stephen Compton. He is the author of the latest and the definitive Harry Greb book, and he's also a videophile, and I've never really talked to anybody with this depth of detail on boxing and his collection and the things that he has access to and stuff. And I actually mentioned Harry Greb to him, knowing that he wrote the book, and said, what are the chances of a show of one of his fights popping up on tape? And he mentioned 2 or 3 of his fights specifically with a date. These were recorded by Paramount. He had that level of detail. So you never know. We get some Harry Greb video that convinces another wave of people, and he may be an overwhelming number 1 in the history of boxing. So a lot could change. We'll see how all that type of stuff goes. But I like the theme. I had a very good time in the discussion. We whittled it down from about 30 people. We are down to 4 people, and we've got some matchups here.
Miguel, like with Mythical Boxing, not to rehash it, boxing right now is kind of like an estate sale. Every once in a while, a little gem pops up that gets kind of exposed to everybody, and on Dave's site, generally it kind of gets highlighted to the mass, which is what I love about it.
Yep.
Thanks for the props, guys. There we go. Is there like a lag or something?
You're lagging. You lag there a little, but don't worry about that. We got it.
All right.
So now what we did last time was we had a tournament situation over the last couple of podcasts, really. And last time we had the round of 8. I'm just going to quickly review the results of the round of 8, and then we're going to head into the round of 4 and then the final. In the opening fight, we had Willie Pep taking on Sam Langford, and Pep advanced by unanimous decision in the simulation. Under the way the simulation went, Pep won about 2/3 of the meetings between the two. So Pep was able to distance himself from the great Sam Langford. The second fight was Muhammad Ali and Henry Armstrong. Armstrong kept it a little closer on the totals. Ali also won by unanimous decision, but Ali also won roughly 2/3 of the fights on the simulation. Edging closer, and the brawl that we all sort of you fixated on for a little bit, that really I think would have been an exciting match to see if somehow it could have happened, was Ezzard Charles and Roberto Duran. And
Duran, Charles.
And Charles advanced by a split decision there. And Charles basically won 51 out of 100 simulations, to let you know how close that was. And then the last one, also closer than the first two, was Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis. And Joe Louis won 52 of the simulations. There were a few ties. So, Robinson won 52 of the simulations, and Joe Louis won 45. Robinson also stopped Joe Louis in the 14th round, so that was a definitive stop. So what we have heading into basically the semifinals is we've decided that Willie Pep is going to face Ezzard Charles, and Ray Robinson is going to face Muhammad Ali. Any thoughts before we head into this, guys?
Well, I think you should also explain, when Dave runs these fights through the simulator, he runs them 100 times, and the best of the 100 is who advances.
Yeah, I'll let Dave take us through his process a little bit. He's done it a couple times, and if he could give the title boxing people their little plug for this too, we couldn't have done it without their program, actually. So
sure. So I kind of I don't know if you guys know the Greatest Warrior show on Spike. It's kind of along the same lines, where they they take two guys from the past and they run it through a computer, and they run it 1,000 times, and then they show at the end what would happen. So it's along those same lines. The program is called Title Bout. The website, let me just pull it up here, is www.titleboutchampionshipboxing.com. And to derive these results, I do run the simulations 100 times. Compile the various statistics, and look for the most common results, and then write up a scenario from there, based on the aggregate numbers and the action.
And a lot of the scenarios, Dave writes them himself, and a lot of them have been very realistic, and that's a good little bit of what Dave adds to this, and some of what you get in Mythical Boxing too. So,
and I like to argue with Dave's analysis over a fight that never happened, by the way.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and actually,
and question it.
Actually, Mike, though it's frightening, sometimes you have a point.
That's by accident.
But
that's the fun part. These are questions that we're never going to have a definitive answer to, and everybody's going to have a different take. But it's the discussion and the debate that makes the process enjoyable.
It really is, man. You do a great job, Dave.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny. I was talking to my boss. He came by the office to check up on our progress and stuff, and I sat with him for a little bit. And I was showing him some of the podcasts, or listening to him with him. He listened to at least one full one for sure, on his own too. So he was a little bit prepared. He liked it. He gave me some feedback. And he was mad that I had gotten rid of Canzaneri early in the tournament. And boy, was he was ready to. He was hot that Rocky Marciano was going to win. Would beat Joe Louis, if all things were equal with pound for pound. He was ready for that one. An interesting thing for a future simulation, and this is there are a couple of guys on the internet that do a good job with this. Dave is my go-to guy here at the podcast. I forget the name of the other fellow, but it's funny how coincidences pop up. My boss said, the actual my all-time, go to Mars and time travel and see a super fight would be Marciano versus Holyfield and at cruiserweight, because that's really about the size where both guys were. And then somebody else ran some type of simulation or did some creative writing on that particular fight as well on the internet. I'm not sure was that you, Dave?
No, that was Fox Doucette.
Exactly. Okay, good.
Boxing writer and part of the Mythical Boxing Group.
Yeah, and another steady, solid contributor there. But so it was very interesting. But that was so. Without dropping his name because he's the big guy, but you could tell he's Italian if he's yelling at me about Canzoneri and Marciano.
Yeah.
Well, look, we got him in Italian here in the finals though, or in the semifinals rather, and it's Willie Pep, Guillermo Papaleo, as his birth certificate said before he turned over to the States, and all we could handle was giving him Willie Pep. So
yeah, it's like an Ellis Island special.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one, and Pepe describes his style if you want to use the corny lingo of the '40s, but one of the all-time technical greats. My boss said like I said, we got into a lot of this stuff, and he loves to talk about it. And he was mentioning he's talked to an incredible amount of people, and he was mentioning several people that once you just start with who the best of all time is Pep is really in the discussion. I'm sure that maybe it's Italian centric when the big guy's around, and that's all good. But Pep is here. He's facing Ezzard Charles. Let's get right into it. Dave, I'm gonna ask you to take us through this sucker. Maybe go through the numbers first, and then or let's do the simulation first. Your reading, and then maybe let's go through the numbers and see how it broke out.
Okay, sure. So Willie Pep versus Ezzard Charles, two all-time greats from the 1940s and 1950s. Predictably, this was a tactical battle contested mostly on the outside. Pep had the edge over the first 8 rounds as he was simply too slippery and slick for Charles. Pep's punches were not hard, but he was quick, accurate, and precise, landing at a rate of nearly 46% for the fight. In contrast, Charles found Pep very difficult to hit, connecting at a rate of only 30%. Charles rebounded in the 9th, landing a hard right that shook Pep. He carried this advantage into the next 3 rounds, tagging Pep with effective power shots. By the 13th, Charles was tiring and the energetic Pep reassumed command. Once again, he frustrated and confused Charles with his quickness and defensive wizardry over the final 3 rounds. In the end, Pep wins a convincing unanimous decision. 146, 140, 146, 141, 145, 140 on the scorecard. Pep moves on to the finals to face the winner of Robinson versus Ali. Okay, as far as the numbers on the 100 simulations, Pep, again, he won pretty convincingly. He won 67 out of the 100 simulations, compared to only 24 for Charles. There were 9 draws. The vast majority of Willie's wins were by decision. 51 of the 67 victories. I mentioned the connect percentage numbers. As far as punch volume, Pep landed approximately 12 more punches per round, an average of 29 versus 17 for Charles. So, in the end, a pretty solid victory for Willie.
Yeah, we talked about Pep in terms of defense, throughout this tournament, and how widely considered he as the greatest defensive fighter of all time. And I think it shows here because you got a knockout artist like Charles, and if I'm not misreading this, it looks like Charles won about a quarter of the fights, but he only got him down once. And when you have a knockout artist and you're able to do that to him, even if it is a simulation, that must, that has to be a lot of what Pep did in his 200 plus wins too. Is just, they're going to miss, and they're going to miss for 12 rounds, and then there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. And that's one of the things that make him amazing. Now, by contrast, he also combines that with a lot of output too. He outpunched Charles by a great deal, and we joked about him being peppy and stuff, but just to say he was the greatest defensive fighter of all time, I think belittles the fact that he's an elite offensive fighter as well.
Yeah, but he also moved forward. It's not like he was running backwards the entire time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just part of his strategy. It wasn't so much his makeup. I mean, he wasn't a knockout artist. That was just his way of finding a way to win.
And he won a lot. He won a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
And he wasn't above, bending the Marcus of Queensberry rules if he needed to.
I think you see that more and more in the old days, and I think that's one of the, I don't want to say it's missing from boxing, because obviously you want things to be fair and for there not to be cheating, but sometimes, it's funny. Sometimes you have to realize and think every single fight is an individual. It's a moment in time. If you repeat the fight at a later date, things will happen differently. And sometimes it's just a natural escalation. You hit me low, I hit you low. Both guys made a mistake, but they're kind of eyeing each other, not trusting each other. There's a little bit of an escalation in the fight. And all of a sudden, there's a tit for tat there. And the old-time referees recognized that and allowed it to happen rather than, tried to cut it off or fend it off. There are many stories of guys that said, they basically handcuffed the ref a little bit and told him, hey, don't enforce all the rules all the time here, And then you get guys like Fritzy Zivic and stuff.
It's like playoff basketball.
So,
exactly. Let him play.
Yeah, let him play. Playoff hockey.
Pep wasn't a guy like Fritzy Zivic, for example, who had a reputation for being a dirty fighter. But yeah, Pep, I consider that part of being great. Pep didn't probably start most of those altercations if you look at it the way I was speaking about, the fights and stuff. But he wasn't a guy who was going to let you do it to him. Probably, just in terms of the makeup of a winner, I see that. So. Props to Willie Pep. You got your goodbyes, Mike?
I am. I was waiting for you to finish, actually.
Okay, good. I usually forget about them, but I've been looking forward to them, actually.
Yeah, of course I got my goodbyes. That's the only thing I'm good at this podcast.
Actually, Mike, you're not even that great at those, but we're going to let you do it anyway.
It's more of an annoyance.
It's a little disjointed. You could do something better than write them on a napkin, Michael.
So it makes me on the palm of my hand.
Just follow my lead with how organized the podcast is and stuff.
Ezzard Charles, 90, 25, and 1, known as the Cincinnati Cobra. He is ranked as the greatest light heavyweight fighter of all time by Ring Magazine. Yet he never won that title. As a heavyweight champion, this is where it gets disjointed. As a champion, he won that world heavyweight title when he outpointed Jersey Joe Walcott over 15 rounds, with notable wins over Joe Louis, Cody Yeraz, Lee Oma, and Joey Maxim, and being the only man to last a full 15 rounds with Rocky Marciano. His name is permanently etched in the annals of boxing folklore. Having died of ALS and being Muhammad Ali's neighbor, he is buried right here in Chicago. Ezzard, you are the man, sir. Sorry to see you go.
Yes, sir, Mr. Charles. Dave, I don't know if it's too much to ask while we're talking here. We're going to get into the semifinal and then the final. I don't know if you could put together a 3-4 match, which would be Charles and Muhammad fighting, his neighbors. I just gave away the.
That'd be good.
I gave away the result for the next.
Maybe the wife could be the quarterback.
Like an idiot, I gave away the result for the next fight, but that's okay. I think we all knew what was coming.
Yeah, from what I understand, Rashid Ali was the cut girl. That's fight.
Well, let's get into the next fight first, so that we don't mess up too bad here. Sugar Ray Robinson versus Muhammad Ali. Dave, take it away.
Okay. These fighters were literally mirror images of each other early, with quick hands, fast feet, and superb boxing skills on display over the course of the first 5 rounds. In the 6th, Robinson nailed Ali with a perfect left hook, which sent him crashing to the canvas. Sugar Ray pounded the greatest along the ropes in rounds 7 and 8. However, Ali courageously managed to weather the storm. Over the next few rounds, Robinson fell into the trap of loading up on shots, looking for the finishing shot. Ali took advantage of this, making Robinson miss, scoring points on the outside in order to put rounds in the bank. By the end of the 12th, the fight was very close. Robinson stepped up the pace in the 13th, landing a vicious 3-punch combination, capped off by a crackling left hook. Ali was in serious trouble once again and managed to survive the round. Ali spent most of the 14th round along the ropes while Robinson wailed away. Ali rallied late, landing a sharp flurry as the round came to a close. The fighters went toe-to-toe, battling on even terms for the first 2.5 minutes of the 50. With 30 seconds remaining, Robinson wobbled Ali with a hard right and pummeled him with combinations as the fight came to a close. The scorecards were read and a close decision for Robinson was announced. 144, 141, 143, 141, 143, 143. Robinson moves on to the finals to face Willie Pep. As far as the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave.
Look out. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. So the numbers, this was a little closer than the first simulation. Out of 100 simulations, Robinson won 58, Ali won 36, and there were 6 draws. So roughly a 60-40 split. About 2/3 of Robinson's victories were by decision. A third were by stoppage. The number of punches landed between the two fighters were roughly equal. Robinson had a few more knockdowns than Ali, an average of about 0.6 per fight versus 0.5. Here's the one that really stood out to me and that I found to be strange, that Robinson had a relatively low connect rate at about 30%, and Ali landed around half of his punches.
That is interesting.
So yeah, in the end, So in the end, Robinson was the better fighter overall, as as reflected in the simulation result. And I think the difference between the two fighters is, both amazingly fast, both great boxers. Robinson is the superior puncher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would. And Ali, I think Ali, it depends. But now how the simulation goes, but you can't give Ali great points for defense, really, because a lot of his defense throughout later in his career too, what he's characterized by is basically his ability to take punishment. And
yes,
so it's
forward, yeah.
And when you're facing a guy like Robinson or certain guys, taking punishment's not a good idea. It's a guy that he's never really shown a propensity to tire unless he was at light heavyweight or here and there. But throughout his career, he had a motor, and you're rarely going to tire him out. So yeah, I thought once you get to that, once I mentioned the finals to some of the people that we were talking about, everybody pretty much predicted to me that we would get Pep and Robinson in the finals. I think it's an all-time fantastic discussion, just that type of fight. Why don't we get right into it and see if Dave can get us through Sugar Ray Robinson and Willie Pep. This is Talk and Shoot Podcast's final. First,
Muhammad Ali,
yeah,
a man born with the name Cassius Clay. He had a stunning record of 56-5 that included him becoming the only 3-time world heavyweight lineal champion, an Olympic gold medalist that has wins over Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, and George Foreman, amongst others. He is, without question, one of boxing's most controversial fighters. Widely considered in many circles as boxing's greatest and premier fighter of all time. Muhammad, we wish you well.
And
that's your segue, Miguel.
it's kind of hard to say goodbye to one of the greats. He could easily be in the finals there, but that's going to leave us Pep and Robinson in the final. I think.
I can't believe Pep made it this far.
There are people.
I think there was a favorable bracket on his end.
I think he would have had a tough. Being the smallest guy in this, and the pound for pound setting on the program helping us overcome. That he would probably get beat up 100 times out of 100 against Joe Louis or one of the heavyweights who would just kill him. But still, he is the smallest guy in the tournament, and therefore I think you kind of have that underdog kind of feel for him. But I think what it's a reminder of too is I mean, he's a guy I haven't seen a great deal of. I have to be honest with you, and I know his story and his incredible record and things like that, and the guy certainly deserves an amazing amount of praise for that stuff. But I think, because he was smaller, he's a guy that you tend to discredit in this. And it's a reminder to me that, hey, there's more work to do here. I'm going to have to go out and look, because I don't think this is the first time that Willie Pep has surprised people in this particular type of discussion. I think he's probably one of those guys that sneaks up on you if you underestimate him, and that's probably what we did, rather than... I think we underestimated him rather than, oh, look, we've discovered Willie Pep or something, so...
Yeah, well, to his credit as well, Dave and I were discussing this prior to recording. He literally collected wins over world champions or former world champions. I mean, when you look at the list of people that he fought and where they were at the time of their career, it is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, no, I mean...
I don't think there's another fighter out there with more wins over world champions than Willie Pep.
One of the fighters, he lost in the early part of the tournament to Sam Langford in what would have been a terrific brawl at any point in the tournament, and that's Harry Greb. Greb commonly gets, especially because there's been a lot of research, including Stephen Compton's book, that's fantastic out there, but there's been a lot of research done on Greb, and Greb is emerging as a guy who's a popular favorite. And one of those things is his longevity and his ability to, fight 200 and something times, and he gets credit for that. And Pep did the same thing basically. Pep actually had a lot less losses and a lot less draws. However you want to rate that. So I think that's another. The fact is. Nowadays, the only guys you get with 200 fights are journeymen, are workhorses, trial horses. It doesn't happen anymore that the elite guys fight like that. And Pep is one of the guys, really one of the last guys. I guess in that era you had a few guys that made it to hundreds, to have a couple hundred fights and stuff. But that's around when that practice or that type of habit started to disappear too. So. That to me also makes Willie Pep a little bit of a throwback guy. He's not like from 1910. Obviously, his career was in the 40s and in there. But he's a throwback. I think in his age they would have called him a throwback to an earlier age where he just fought so many times and stuff like that. Just a lot to consider heading into the finals, because you got Robinson on the other end, and as we talked about it. Robinson's one of those guys that, before Muhammad Ali, after certain of the other guys, but he was a world transcendent star. We talked about him tap dancing and compared that to, rap albums today and stuff, but he was in the media. He was trying to, become a, Sugar Ray Robinson Incorporated, basically with, business interests here and there and stuff. It was a rough model for it. But he was one of the first big superstars in that. And in terms of boxing, obviously with the lack of video on his early career, what's passed down to us is that we lost a great deal of seeing him at his prime in speed and as he was coming up when he was very impressive and had the huge winning streaks and stuff. But he's always in this discussion. And I would name him my favorite heading into the finals, despite all the wows that we've gotten out of Willie Pep so far.
Sure.
Dave, before I let you read, and I know you did it in your head and stuff like that, but you think he's the favorite heading into this fight?
Yeah, definitely. Sugar Ray Robinson. I think he is the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time.
Okay. And and Robinson didn't quite make the 200 and something plus club like Pep and Greb, But he was a throwback in that respect too, because he has a ton of fights, and he's in the neighborhood. Certainly, more than double or triple the fights of your current welterweights now. In his case, so without further ado, Dave, I will let you do the honors and take us through the finals of the Talk and Shoot first annual greatest boxer of all time tournament. Go ahead.
Okay, guys, get that belt ready.
Well, it's being, like we said, it's being forged right now in England.
And I think since
Master craftsman,
dwarves, it's being crafted by dwarves, literally from the underworld.
We have children in some third world country pounding out this belt right now.
All right,
Go ahead, Dave.
Here we go. The championship final. The pesky will of the wisp. Frustrated.
Wait. Before we start, what's the attendance? Do you have any idea what the attendance was for this fight?
Okay, we're at Yankee Stadium. I'm doing this right off the top of my head. Yankee Stadium, 67,000 rabid fans have come out.
I heard it was a who's who in attendance of notable fighters, past champions as well. Is that true?
Yeah, we got Joe Louis, got Sugar Ray Leonard.
Incredibly, apparently Willie Pep's ring entrance includes Justin Bieber. And
who was the announcer? Who was the main? Was it Buffer or was it Jimmy Lennon Jr.? Come on, you're leaving out all these details.
Gotta be Buffer.
Oof.
Yeah, Floyd Mayweather's at ringside, claiming that he is the true and rightful world all-time pound-for-pound champion.
Leon Spinks was yelling something. It was unintelligible, though. No one could understand him.
and Jerry Cooney ordered 2 hot dogs and charged them to Mayweather's account.
Right.
Anyway, we're having a good time.
I mean, it was amazing what was going on at this. Outside the ring was incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah, but anyway, let's.
Go ahead.
We're having a good time here, but let's get into the Sugar Ray Willie Pep right up first, then we'll get into the numbers, and then we'll head back down into uncharted territory.
Right.
All right, guys. The pesky will of the wisp frustrated Robinson in the early rounds. Sugar Ray, normally a prolific combination puncher, was reduced to swinging at air and throwing telegraphed punches one at a time. The normally precise Robinson landed less than 30% of his punches for the fight. After 8 rounds, Pep was comfortably ahead on the scorecards. Sugar Ray gradually worked his way back into the fight, wearing down Pep with a tenacious body attack. By the end of the 11th, he narrowed the gap on the scorecards. In the 12th, a clash of heads opened a nasty cut over Robinson's right eye. This turned the tide of the fight again. Pep targeted the wound with accurate punches, while Robinson's ability to counter was limited by his compromised vision. After the 14th, Pep, comfortably ahead on the scorecards, appeared to be 3 minutes away from securing the title of greatest pound-for-pound fighter ever. However, this was the great Sugar Ray Robinson we were talking about here, and he wasn't out of the fight just yet. With 90 seconds remaining, Robinson gritted his teeth and landed a smashing left hook to the liver, knocking the wind out of Pep. Sugar Ray followed up with a blistering 4-punch combination capped off by a crackling right that sent Pep to the canvas. Pep rose at the count of 7 but didn't have a leg up under him. As the clock moved under 1 minute, Robinson pursued Pep to the ropes and teed off with vicious combinations, rendering Pep defenseless. With 29 seconds remaining, one final right hand from Robinson ended the fight. Pep slumped to the canvas and would not get up. Robinson wins by KO in the 15th round and earns the title of greatest pound-for-pound fighter ever.
Wow.
That definitely gets a wow out of me. Just well done, Dave. Well done, because that was, it was really nice. You got to be a little bit creative, and we're trying to have fun with this stuff, and it's really nice to read it because it's realistic, and you could see the fight going that way. And, thankfully he didn't say, well, they danced for 15 rounds and did nothing. Which is what Mike has grown accustomed to getting in his super fights these days, right?
Right, absolutely.
Do we have a goodbye for Willie?
We do have a heartfelt goodbye. 229 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw with 65 knockouts. Pep boxed 1,956 rounds in his 26-year career as a pro. As an amateur, Pep fought Sugar Ray Robinson in an attic of a feed store in Norwich, Connecticut. Outweighing Pep nearly 130 pounds to 105, the bigger Robinson won by decision. Notable wins include Joey Archibald, Abe Denner, Chalky Wright, Sal Bartolo, Willie Joyce, Manuel Ortiz, Phil Terranova, and Patty DeMarco, amongst many others. Willie Pep collected victories over world champions, and based on his actions after he broke his neck in a plane crash, Willie lived to fight. It was in his blood. He didn't know anything else, nor did he want to. Willie Pep, sir, a man amongst men. Take care.
Yes, sir. There we go.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you go through like his record, and Willie Pep certainly is not my strong suit in terms of knowledge, but when you go through this guy's record and what he's done in his career, it truly is amazing. It really is. He's special.
No, I agree. And I think even though he may have surprised us from the beginning, but I think few are going to be able to argue if they get into the details and stuff that, in these discussions, the more you have him, he's going to turn up because,
he has to.
I mean, next year, and like we were throwing around the idea of doing this annually and stuff, but next year, just one spin different, and Harry Greb comes out on top. And Greb was gone at the round of 16 in this thing. Greb could easily replace Pep, and Pep could be gone early next time, or any of the other guys, because I think that's what it is. It's a discussion that's just going to keep going and going, and it all rests on a little bit of creativity and just knowledge right now. As discussed with Greb, if the fights that Paramount taped of him, I think one of the Mickey Walker fights was taped by Paramount, or at least a company taped it, and Paramount was the company that released it. And I have that details from Stephen Compton himself. So there is the possibility that could pop up in somebody's basement or somebody's attic and stuff. To go further into that, and just so that there's hope, so that this is the part where there's hope for the people that want more information and want to get more information on the old-time guys. There are people out there that are working on this. I'm going to garble this story a little bit, but I think that the essence is what's important, and you guys, I think, will appreciate this. Apparently, there was a mining town somewhere in northern Canada that was operating in the early 1900s, and some of those towns got pretty prosperous, and this town got to the point where there were a couple of saloons and this sort of thing. And one of the things that they had was a theater, and the theater had purchased, for 20 years while it was operating, had purchased, the movies of the time and whatever they were showing at the time, I guess newsreels and things, and fights. And so anyway, so in the 30s or 40s, this mining town shuts down, and they reincorporated a few years later. The theaters and everything are torn down. Everything is covered over with cement, and they actually build like a YMCA type building, in the area of the old town, and it's servicing the area now. Anyway, that's in the 40s and the 50s. You get the YMCA there. So now, fast forward to about 2010, and the YMCA is now an old building that they tear down, and they open up the cement flooring and everything like that, and boom, there's all that tape sitting there, well preserved, in the cold dirt of the Yukon. And there are fight tapes, and there are things in there that are being reviewed by the guys that know. Now, how do you even find out that happened? I don't even know how you begin, but that's an incredible example of how there's still an ability to unearth rare material here. And Mr. Compton is at the forefront of that stuff when you consider he is, he's contacted and has tapes in his collection of things from Australia, from the heyday in Australia in the 1900s and 1910s. Rare tape of people like Jimmy Clabby that are not out there. Jimmy Clabby sparring, basically, not fights, but he's got a wealth and a depth of material from all over the world. And it gives me a lot of hope that it's out there. Now, the tape and the actual hard, material isn't going to last forever. So, people, we do have to thank for what we have and, weep for what we're going to lose or have already lost. But there is still hope that stuff is out there. And we will see if we ever get that. But, again, getting back to the discussion of the greatest fighter of all time, all that tape talk was just on the glimmer of what that would do to Harry Greb's stock, already sky high. If there were actually a definitive one of his standout fights appeared on tape, like a Mickey Walker fight or something like that, that could change things and really turn the tide his way. Other guys, from the tournament that we had, basically, I could still see Sam Langford popping, the simulator going one way and still have Langford come through this and be the greatest of all time. And there are others. So,
Fitzsimmons has got a puncher's chance too.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like I said, the idea of looking at the code of the program and stuff has crossed my mind, and just to see exactly how it's done and if there's any tweaking that could be done, with consultation and stuff that might make it a little bit better. It would be interesting to me to see how the pound for pound setting works and how that stuff is there, because that's the key to the whole thing for the fun purposes that we're having here. Anyway, Dave, what do you got going on over at Mythical Boxing right now? Because I've seen you've been putting together tournaments and weight classes, and I've seen a couple recently that seem to be really well received. You've been doing like a couple of old flashbacks, like what if in the 70s, or changing alternate realities and stuff. Describe a little bit of what you get into out there as we close out here the last 10 minutes.
All right, thanks, guys. So right now we're working on a lightweight tournament. In the past, we've I can hear myself reverberating in the background here.
You're coming across okay here. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But go ahead. Talk about that lightweight tournament a little bit, because you got the lightweight tournament. And if I remember correctly, I think that you made selections from certain windows of time. Okay, pick 4 from 1900 to 1930. Pick 4 from... Describe your format.
Exactly. I divided it into 4 eras. The Pioneers bracket, the Classic bracket, Modern bracket, Contemporary bracket. And I like to get the membership involved. So I designate a couple of locks for each era, and then ask for feedback from the group around who else they'd like to see included. So we have, we actually, for the lightweights, we ended up with a big field, about 44 fighters, which I'll probably round off to 48.
Okay.
In the past, we've done tournaments of different sizes. We just did the featherweights, which was a field of about 16. In the past, we've done the heavyweights, light heavyweights, middleweights, cruiserweights. The tournament sizes have been as large as 64 and as small as 8. And as far as the What If series, that's always been kind of an interesting genre to me. If you change this or that element of history, how would things evolve differently? So I started an alternate timeline starting in 1969. I'm up to about 1981 now.
Talk about some of the matchups that you put together in there, and just so people get a feel for it, because there are definitely some thought went into it, and definitely there have been some great discussions that have come from them.
So, yeah, one of the scenarios we explored was, what if Joe Frazier fought Sonny Liston back in 1969? Sonny was ancient at that point, but he could still punch, and lo and behold, the simulator had an upset, which created an interesting trilogy between the two of them. Another scenario with the heavyweights that we explored was, what if Teofilo Stevenson had defected to the U.S. and turned pro after the 1976 Olympics? Plausible scenario? Probably not, but an interesting one to play around with. So that set up an interesting series of fights between him, Larry Holmes, and George Foreman, who we had not retiring in 1977. And my favorite story twist was we had Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier retiring after the Thrilla in Manila, which I think really should have happened. And they did it as a joint press conference. And, were able to patch up their differences, which, again, not sort of real-world plausible, but it would have been nice. Would have been nice to see.
Yeah, no, that's a good touch, and maybe, perhaps we would have avoided some of the deterioration that Muhammad Ali has suffered, and you see him today, and, you still see a potent life force in there, but he's a shadow of his former self, and maybe some of that is due to not having retired. So that's just, like I said, that's why I think we could give Mythical Boxing a nice little prop on the podcast here, because heck, the way these things are going, we probably get more listeners on the podcast from Mythical Boxing than people we're going to send there right now. But it's good people out there doing good work, and boxing discussion is never anything wrong with talking about the sport that we love, and getting into some of this stuff. It's like I don't think I think it's done with, like I said, it's done with a respectful attitude. There's not a lot of people getting upset or where the discussion deteriorates to the point where it's not boxing anymore. It's whatever nonsense comes up. So definitely worth looking at. Any closing discussion? I was going to try to read my Sugar Ray Robinson book that I have down here with me in Costa Rica because of the simulation. But I was given recently Don Dunphy's autobiography, My Life in the Ring, or something along those lines. I started to read that. I'll have a review for you guys on it in the next couple of days. I'll put this caveat on there. Don Dunphy, obviously the broadcaster from the 40s to the 80s, did the live call of the Billy Conn-Joe Louis fight. I believe he did one of the Duran Hearns fights, or towards the end of his career, so that you get a scope of what he did. But you got to keep in mind that this is an autobiography. It's not a true boxing book, because it gets into broadcasting, and he dealt with some of the other sports and some of the other stuff in there. But I'm waiting to get into the boxing. I'm through about page 60, and he's just beginning to get hired into that, and we'll see what kind of interesting stuff. Anyway, I'm promising a book review, and I've been reading this. But to wrap up about Sugar Ray Robinson, I was watching an interview with Muhammad Ali, and there are a couple. It's funny because Muhammad Ali is obviously, many of the images that come to mind are Muhammad Ali's, screaming he's the greatest, and I'm pretty, and you're ugly, and this, and the kind of stuff that made him bombastic. But there, he's also so prolific. There are a lot of interviews where you have him very candid and humble, especially in times, when he was less active in the latter part of his career and then in retirement. And he pretty much says that he himself considers himself the greatest heavyweight of all time, but that the greatest fighter of all time is Sugar Ray Robinson. And I think Robinson has so many of his peers and so many of his people contemporary from his time and then afterwards and things like that fall back to him. That, you know, once we get to the 100th one of these, and we've done it 100 times, Robinson's probably going to be the winner in terms of leading in victories. You know, if you run 100 simulations or 100 tournaments, how many does Sugar Ray Robinson win? He'll probably win unless Greb does, or unless Willie Pep breaks through. But Robinson, he's a first-time champion here in the Target Shoot podcast, and I don't think we have to give any real explanations for him doing winding up here. Any closing thoughts, guys?
No, I don't at all. I mean, I think what made this easy was, rather than us talking against blue in the face, we can do the first round of cuts, which is obviously what we did. But the simulator really allowed this to kind of move along to where we just accepted the result and, addressed, our concerns and thoughts about it, and it made it a lot smoother. I'd like to continue doing this, whether it's just cruiserweights or welterweights. It's certainly a discussion that continued.
I think Dave and
on many different levels.
The simulator is a great program. I think Dave adds a unique twist too with his insight and knowledge, and I agree with you completely. I agree. I like the exercise, and here's the part of it is you got to recognize we've had great discussions on boxing. Hopefully, people are more interested in the sport. Hopefully, people that know more than us, rather than be bitter and say, "Oh, those guys don't know what they're talking about," help educate us and get me some more information. I'd be glad to try to get as much information about this sport out there to the masses, to everybody. So, with that said, that's why all this is good. Sure, it's a total fantasy. I mean, we might as well be playing Dungeons and Dragons with a fantasy, tournament in certain aspects of it. But at the same time, there's really legitimate discussions and seriousness that go on. I think it's very respectful for boxing that we remember a lot of the old timers and a lot of the things that went on, and truly the size and scope of the sport. So I'm all for it, and maybe we'll talk offline. Maybe we'll get an idea together for maybe just an all-time super fights card or something we could talk about. Got a lot of themes here. I'm sure Dave is going to join us for many of the future podcasts. Mike is just basically like a cancer, has become the co-host of the show, and and I mean, just so that people get an idea here, he does deserve the co-host job. He's been carrying more than the weight of anybody that should. He's doing a great job and helping me out and stuff. But at the same time, he asked to be co-host. How rude is that? I mean, this guy he's unbelievable.
No, demanded. Yeah. On air. I didn't even do it privately. I did it on air.
And privately. I mean, it was a relentless attack here. And obviously, it's once I had to name him co-host, I had to triple his salary, and
and they cut it to half.
Well, with the tripling of the salary, you got to consider that 3 times 0, still 0, but he's tripled, so he's in great shape, and we're going to sign off on that little high note there. But I do want to thank both Dave and Mike, in all seriousness. The podcast and Keith Palmer as well, who joined us for some of the earlier ones. I know he'll join us here again. We couldn't have done this without a couple of dedicated people and people dedicated to this whole sport. And, I think that's part of what this is a tribute to. I hope people have fun. And like I said, if people have more knowledge, you get boxing sometimes suffers from that. You don't know you don't know shit about boxing. You're not a boxing person. So, but that's not a good reason to clam up and keep information, keep stories, keep details about the sport in the past and into some something that's going to go away. It's important to get this information out there. With all that said, this is Miguel Durati at the Talk and Shoot podcast. We have closed out our greatest boxer of all time, and we will talk to you on our next cast. Thanks, guys.